You're listening to The Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch TV about New Jersey. I'm Jodie.
And I'm Andrea. And this season, we're talking about the Showtime series Yellowjackets. Today, we're recapping Season 2, Episode 6, Key. I think I started out too high energy on that one, and then I remembered what episode we were talking about, and I tried to ease us into something a little more somber.
I know.
Ooh,
I know.
Boy.
This was we knew it was going to be a rough one.
Yeah.
We knew it was coming. And it was.
Yeah.
And I'm going to apologize as one of your hosts here for my terrible spring allergies. I'm going to be sniffling and sound a little froggy, maybe. But hopefully the pollen will give it a fucking rest soon and I'll be back to normal. So we talked about this ahead of time, and I think we decided we're going to go through the two timelines separately again. But we'll start with 2021 this time. And save 96 for the end because it's a bit heavier and because it's, I think, had the biggest current impact. Okay. Well, we start with the fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the fun stuff. And so in the past, we also have kind of separated this out by person or pair. But since they're all sort of like coming together in their own way and ending up in the same spot, I think we decided we're just going to kind of go through it in the order that it happened.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's exciting, though, that this episode was, which we speculated last week at the end of our Rosemary's Baby episode, which after everything I've been seeing popping up from the different the writers and such from the show, I'm really glad that we did cover Rosemary's Baby. That ended up working out.
I've been patting myself on the back for that recommendation.
Yeah, it was a great pull, Jodie.
Not that I had any idea that it was going to have anything to do with it, but
I know, but still, that's cool. Yeah. But we did talk at the end of that of how we thought if this was going to be the last scene. We saw the reunion and we kind of speculated that would probably be toward the end of the episode. We were right.
Yeah. Although it wasn't the last scene.
No.
Which, I think was smart because it would have felt like a little bit of not a letdown, but like we've already seen that.
Exactly.
We know it's coming,
Yeah, for sure.
But we start with, in 2021, we start with Misty being officially checked in as a new cult member. We used to have this thing way back, a couple weeks ago when we started this, where we would talk about the most Jersey moments of the show, and Misty carrying brass knuckles with her and throwing them into the bowl. That's pretty Jersey.
Pretty Jersey.
That's pretty Jersey. She throws binoculars, like those little opera glasses, handcuffs. I think those were hers. I can't imagine who else's they were.
Yeah.
Brass knuckles, a syringe, and some kind of random medication into the bowl.
Misty.
So she's being checked in by some mustachioed man. Little less creepy than the cop, but still a little off.
Little less creepy, but very, I was going to say quirky, strange.
Yeah.
He's a character.
Yeah. And he wants her phone, which she does not want to give up.
No.
And Walter is currently texting her in the moment.
Oh.
But she eventually gives up her phone, and then we see Lottie come in and spot Misty. She does not look happy.
No, she doesn't. Lottie is clearly, it's not even just annoyed. She seems a little rattled that Misty showed up.
Yeah, totally. I noted that Lottie in this scene is in orange and Misty is in yellow. Mm-hmm. The colors of their clothing in this episode, I think, were very specifically changed at certain times.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, they have a little confrontation where Lottie's like, why the fuck are you here? And she's like, I'm here to get Natalie.
Misty gives a really good line read, or Christina, I guess, gives a really good line read with that hello, Charlotte. It's very like, hello, Newman.
Yeah. And then, of course, Lottie gives her classic, when Misty asks, what is this? Yeah. Lottie says, I help people heal from past trauma so they stop running from themselves. And it's like, okay, how many times have you said this line?
Exactly.
But they have this little confrontation, and then Lottie has this weird moment because Misty says, you guys aren't even friends. And Lottie just something happens. She pauses, something goes weird in her brain. And then she shifts and she asks Misty if she'll stay to thinking it'll help Natalie and maybe help her as well. And it's not clear what exactly happened there, but it was definitely
Yeah, and I think that's what she's referencing later in the scene at the her psychiatrist or whoever that is office, and she gets hit with that feeling that she's talking about. Where 5 seconds before this, it seemed like all she wanted was for Misty to leave, and something tells her whatever that is.
Should stay. Yeah,
yeah,
totally. And then we hop over to Shauna and Jeff and Callie.
It seems like people are really starting to tire of this storyline. And I like it. I think we'll talk about it later, but we get I think a really great moment from Shauna.
Definitely.
In this, we're starting to really see that I was wrong about Callie early on. I like her so much.
She's so much more likable now.
Which is a shame because she's so much more likable and also is becoming so much more like her terrible mother, who I do love.
And also a pawn in something that she has no control over.
Exactly. But I'm starting to really care for poor Callie.
Well, and I just have such a soft spot for Jeff. Like, I need the comic relief that is Jeff. I need it. With everything that's so heavy that's happening, it's like modern day Misty, modern day Jeff. Like, they just keep me, like, every now and then at least having a laugh.
Yeah, and the thing, too, is you're saying that I'm realizing is, even with the stakes as high as they are theoretically for the three of them, I'm not really worried about them. Like, I think they're going to be as fine as they can be. And so it's like...
I mean, emotionally, Shauna's not fine, but like...
Well, no. But again, as fine as she... Yeah.
Yeah.
But in terms of, like, I don't think Shauna's going to jail.
No.
I don't think Callie... Like, I'm just...
Yeah. I totally agree. I think that, you know... Aside from the massive trauma that they're all dealing with,
right,
they're going to be fine. But Kevin wants him to come to the police station for questioning, and Jeff is all going to do his like protective dad thing until he realizes that it's not him that they want to talk to; it's Callie and Shauna.
He just keeps being right too. Is the thing, because like he says, like, I got your back, Shauna, whatever, and she's like, well, by us, it's me and Callie, and he's like, this is exactly what I was. And he's right. Okay.
Well, and then Shauna says that it would have been better if Callie had sex with the cop.
God.
And Callie's like, Mom, like, good God.
Which is kind of what we had also sort of. I mean, really.
She's not wrong.
But exactly. She says the thing that we've all been saying.
Yeah.
Though I don't think. There has been some misconduct here already, either way. So I don't know that it really matters.
And it's still just a missing persons investigation. Like, they don't know that he's dead.
That's also true.
Like, this is a bit of an overreach.
I kind of keep forgetting that.
Yeah. The cops have no idea that Adam's dead. They just know he's missing.
Right. The only one who has any proof is Kevin.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Such a good point. I keep forgetting that.
Yeah, they don't know that yet.
They have no body.
No. Although, in the previews, we didn't see any previews for next week, but in the, like, season previews, we do see a crime scene that my guess is that that's Hacklebarney Park, and they're finding the torso.
I just nodded along. I'm like, yep. Oh, but wait, do they actually say, hold on, is this just the Jersey in me, or do they actually say, do we know that they dumped the body in Hacklebarney Park?
Yes.
Or is that just us joking now?
No. That's canon.
Amazing.
That's canon. So then we go back to the cult and Lisa looking for Natalie. And I kind of forgot that this was like pretty quickly after last episode when Nat and Lottie had that sort of like regression, whatever where they brought Nat back.
Nat's still wearing that same duster. So.
Yeah. Like, cause at first I was like, why is she so like off? But then I remembered, like, this is, I guess, right after the night where Lottie like brought her back to the time when she overdosed and talked to Travis about how like they brought it back.
Yeah.
So she's out shooting at jars of honey.
And I was like, God, Nat is being so, and when you say that literally the night before she's remembering for the first time and who knows how long what really happened, that I was like, Nat's being so angsty, but it is that like, she is also still a teenager. Like, all of these women are so, and we've said it over and over again, so stunted. But sometimes her lines especially feel a little cheesy to me, but it is just like
Shauna too. I think that the two of them especially are very much stuck as their teen selves in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you kind of see that here. Like I'm poison.
Right.
All I do is hurt people.
Right. Very, very sort of melodramatic, but also like we understand why she feels that way.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's interesting though. Like this was a really this and the other scene where Lisa and Nat are talking. I was like kind of moved by, because Lisa's getting through to Nat in a way that I don't think anyone ever has.
Absolutely.
It feels like they're talking about the fact that Travis supposedly killed himself. Right. And you know, she's saying she ruins people. She killed her best friend. And Lisa says it was already in him. And Nat says it's in me too. They saw and did so much fucked up shit. And maybe it was to survive, but they didn't deserve to. Like, this is some real frank language and honesty from Nat, who has been very cagey about this stuff with most people.
Absolutely.
Like, she was in rehab before. She didn't tell anyone anything. But there's something about Lisa.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of it is Lisa's not like impressed or afraid of or intimidated by Nat putting all of that stuff on. Like she says, like,
or by stabbing her with a fork.
Yeah, exactly. She says a little later, you know, I hurt people, and Lisa's like, so what? Like everybody does.
Yeah.
I've said it a million times, but Juliette Lewis is so fantastic, and this scene in particular, she's so good. The way she gives that maybe. I don't know that we deserve to. All that is so good. She's so
well, and we've called out sort of her like comedic physicality before in a lot of this, but this episode, I feel like she had some really beautiful, subtle emotions that you saw kind of go across her face that were less over the top, but felt very like real.
Absolutely. I will say Lisa's word choice here was by no fault of her own, not the thing to say when she said it was already in him, as opposed to being like, the idea of all of them being not infested. What's the word?
Well, they brought it back with them, kind of thing. Yeah. Then we go to Van and Ty.
One second. I'm so sorry.
No.
She says here, like you said, she says, I made, it's my fault he killed himself. I made him believe, I told him, and then Lisa cuts her off before she has a chance to say. So we still don't know what specifically Travis thinks, or she thinks Travis thinks she was right about, other than that they brought it back, right?
I mean, I kind of assumed that that's what they were talking about, but only because that's what we saw.
But do we think, or we're going to find out that that's not what Travis meant, even though that's what they're all assuming? Or do we think
I think we have no idea what Travis actually meant. I think that Nat and Lottie are like kind of grasping at straws to figure out what the note meant. If he even wrote the note, like I still feel like there's so much in that story that we don't understand and they don't understand.
Totally.
Their explanations for all of it sort of still don't make a ton of sense to me. But so then we do go to Van and Ty. And this sort of moment is really, it's very quick. They're in Van's office. We see more of her attachment to earlier times. She's using a very old Mac, like one of the big bubble ones that was like a fun color.
It's good. I don't even know how that thing is still chugging along.
I know. But they talk about the night before, which, again, as I had forgotten, is when other Ty kind of made an appearance and said, like,
this isn't where we're supposed to be.
This isn't where we're supposed to be. I almost said, we're not supposed to be here today, and that's something else.
Other Ty says, supposed to be here
wasn't even supposed to be here today. Sorry, I just went somewhere else with that.
I understand.
But Van and this interaction is so interesting because it really is like Van being very cognizant of the fact that Ty is super toxic for her, but also still being really like not willing to tell her to leave.
Yeah. Absolutely.
She reminds her that she's married. She's like, by the way, you're married. Like,
yeah.
There is no
and Ty
us.
is kind of taken aback by that a little bit.
Yeah.
Not that she forgot that she was married, but kind of
she probably did.
But she, at the very least, wasn't thinking about that as having anything at all to do with her life in this specific moment.
Exactly. And Van is like, hi, all of this that you're putting on me, you got here like what, yesterday? Like, it really struck me as that sort of like narcissist, codependent, toxic, not to throw terms out there, but I don't think they're too far off.
No, I don't think so at all. Especially when we actually had one of our listeners sent me a message on Reddit a little while ago and said we were talking about this relationship and was like, it's like Van's behavior is so much. And I don't know if we've said this outright on the show, but it's so clear that she's the child of an addict, which we know, but it's like,
God, yeah.
It's absolute, that kind of codependent behavior, specifically of the like parent-child, but just kind of then being transferred into this relationship or onto this relationship.
100%. I mean, like, not to go too personal, but like there's something to someone being raised in that situation by that type of parent that then turns you into someone that's always trying to save everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's definitely like, as much as she knows she should tell Ty to get the fuck out of there, she's like, no, well, who else is going to save her?
Yeah. And she also knows as much as she should. Van knows she's not going to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she even says at the end of that scene, Ty does say like, I'll get out of your way. I forget exactly what she says. Mm-hmm. And then Van's like, I've got to open the store, but if you want to make yourself useful, because she doesn't want Ty to go.
Yeah. That was the moment where she could have been like, yeah, I think you should. Mm-hmm. And she was like, well, if you want to be here, make yourself useful. And that was like basically saying, no, please stay in a weird way. This is also when Ty notices Van's financial situation is not the best. She sees the bills in the trash. Mm-hmm. Which again, she'll bring up later on. And then we get the scene with Lottie and the, whatever this therapist, psychiatrist situation is, because she's not in the same office as she was last time.
No, or at the very least, she's in a different part of that office we haven't seen, which does not
at all look like the same office.
No, and this show, we talk about pretty much every week how oftentimes we speculate wildly about something that the show isn't really, that we've just decided there's something else going on, and then the show proves us wrong and it was exactly what it seems. I don't know how this could fall under that umbrella. They shoot it so specifically, like the fact that we never see the psychiatrist's face, the fact that the psychiatrist, like even in the subtitles, it just says psychiatrist.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it in terms of production, they already had the set from the psychiatrist. Yeah. They could have just used it again.
Yep.
If it was supposed to be her going back to the same person. But instead, they have a completely different setup. Like, we only see from the psychiatrist's perspective.
And something that's really important here is the psychiatrist calls her Lottie. Nobody in the adult timeline other than the other survivors, the rest of the soccer team, calls her Lottie.
Right. She's Charlotte to all those people. Yeah. And so we hear a little bit more here about what Lottie thinks is actually happening. And she says like, she's afraid she's not ill and never was. And that's like, I mean, that kind of sent a chill down my spine, because that's true. Yeah. Like, it's one thing to explain the experiences that she's had through the framework of like the DSM and mental illness and all of that. And like, as scary as those things can be, it's a little more controlled than what the alternative is.
Well, and it's so sad. This is the most sympathetic I've felt toward Lottie in 2021, because it's like, right, you were out there, you already know that people think that differently of you because of your mental health, right? And that's something that you've been dealing with. And that also, she was medicated before she left, and we think the darkness was out there. It's not, they didn't bring it there. So she was struggling with some mental health issues before they left. And then they get to the wilderness and they all experience whatever they experience. And then she comes home with the rest of them and everybody else is acting like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And it's like, how awful for somebody who does struggle, with the kind of mental health struggles that she has, to have everybody tell her, and even if they're not outright telling her, but to act as if it was all in her head. Yeah. And that's something she's been dealing with this whole time, is so sad.
Well, and I think it's sort of illuminating to hear her talk more specifically about what she thinks it was. Like she says, the power of that place, the god of that place.
Yeah.
They did terrible things in its name. And so it's feeling more like there's an entity that she's referring to, even if it's just quote unquote the wilderness, that it's like a specific thing.
Yep.
I also noted here that she's wearing, not that this should matter, but a red sweater and jeans, and the bandage on her hand is currently red. I do think that they're like, they've said that the color of the clothing is significant.
You just keep tracking that as we go along. Cause,
I'm mostly tracking like
patterns emerge.
Yeah. And I'm also mostly tracking right now, like Nat and even Misty, like when they get to the cult versus like how much more lavender they're wearing. Because I think we'll talk about it later in this episode. Suddenly Nat goes full lavender, full heliotrope. And so we're back at the cult at the drum circle.
And wait, is Misty's jacket, I know it's like a plaid. Is it already purple and white?
Yeah.
She's prepared. She showed up ready to buy in.
Well, she had a yellow coat on when she got there, but then she switched into the purple and white checkered jacket. So I don't know if that was something she had with her or they just had a very stylish plaid jacket that was in her size.
Either way.
Yeah. But she's a drum circle now, getting into her new life.
I just love this wellness retreat, whatever, that is on the surface, the silliest, lightest, most wooey, new agey, like that burial in the first scene here that's, that we joked about, and their silly homemade masks, and now this silly drum circle with the person crying.
Yep.
And then what's seems to be lurking underneath.
Yeah. And so Misty is sort of observing this woman kind of crying, and the guy that she met in the beginning is like kind of encouraging her to do the same. She's like, no, I'm just here to talk to Nat.
I'm just going through the motions.
Oh, but this had one of the best lines.
Oh,
in the episode. This moment I texted to you because you watched it first this time.
I did.
Usually,
I stayed up.
Usually I think I tend to get to it before you do during the day.
Yep.
But this time you had already watched it, and
it's not a show that you should watch at midnight before bed.
No.
At least this episode. I usually watch it Friday morning, which is also not, I don't know when the right time is for the show, but I usually watch it with my morning coffee and breakfast. And
Friday morning, I think is definitely less crazy making than
because then I at least get to go out and see that the sun has risen. Like I watched this episode of all episodes, and then like a little after one just kind of had to like slink off to bed and be like, welp. Good
God. Yeah, I'm really glad I didn't do it this time and stay up for it. I watched it the next day. But I literally just texted you, after dissolving a subscription horse meat business he started with his brother.
His brother-in-law.
His brother-in-law, sorry.
It's very important.
A subscription horse meat business. Yes, and this comes up as he's telling Misty that most people end up there after some sort of like breakup of some kind.
Well, like his horse meat business.
I know. It's just, yeah. But as soon as he finds out, and the group finds out, that she knows Natalie, Misty becomes a little bit of a celebrity.
Which she loves.
Absolutely.
She one of my other favorite lines is that if you're done crying, I could tell you some stories.
Yeah. Yeah. And they are. They're like, okay, yeah, let's hear about it.
Because it's all show. They're all playing their little, like, I don't know, self-helpy parts in this.
Well, and all Misty's ever wanted is to be like, someone important in the group.
Yeah.
Somebody that people want to hear from. Which
obviously we see big time in 96, which we'll get to pretty soon.
Yeah. But we pop back over to the police station because Callie and Shauna have just gotten there. I noted that they're dressed kind of similarly. They're wearing a similar color palette. Like both have these like olive green kind of overshirts on. And Shauna's saying that, Callie doesn't have to talk to them.
Their dynamic, the two of them, is so much better.
They're co-conspirators now. Yeah, not just mother and daughter. They're co-conspirators.
And even when they're kind of like picking at each other a little bit, like Shauna says something like, you haven't done anything wrong, you haven't committed any crimes, and Callie's like, isn't lying to the cops a crime?
Right.
And even that is still like kind of playful almost.
Yeah. And then I have in my notes, Matt/Jay is waiting for them, being a smiley asshole.
I also wrote Syracuse is an asshole.
Yeah.
Cops.
He's the fucking worst.
Again, I love this actor, but boy, now that he knows that Callie knows he's a cop, now that he thinks he's got them, he has become so smug and so slimy. It is, oh God.
He is the worst.
Yep.
But he and Kevin Tan, I think, have decided that they're going to split the two of them up. And so he's going to talk to Shauna, and Kevin's going to try to get Callie to spill, so to speak. And
I would bet that they hadn't decided together that they were going to play good cop, bad cop, that Kevin was just going to play cop, and that Matt has decided that makes him bad cop then. Right. So that's the tact he's taking with Shauna.
He's the fucking worst. So we go back to Van and Ty. We get the little miscongeniality reference. Does miscongeniality go in Sandy good or Sandy bad?
That's a game we should play.
Yeah. Well, and Ty is good Ty and bad Ty. So.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
But this is where she confronts Van about her financial issues, and Van is like, "Excuse me, this is not what we're here to talk about."
She's
which
like,
is fair.
Although Ty does bring up the thing that we have often questioned. She's like, well, I used to be a real estate lawyer. Right, exactly.
But then the phone rings and she says, oh, it could be the hospital. And Ty goes off to take the call, and it's not. This is like, it's almost like she's remembering, oh, wait, my wife is in the hospital. Yeah. My son is God knows where.
Yeah.
I had a dog. But that doesn't last for very long.
They must be, by the way, somebody did point out last week, I think either on Reddit or one of the Facebook groups, that he and Simone were staying with Simone's mother. So
yeah.
So probably he's not actually
Sammy's not like still at school or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's fun to think that, he's actually home aloneing it.
Yeah. And him being with Simone's mother is just, it seems like it's just fortunate, because I don't know that Ty, who knows?
She wasn't calling babysitters before she left.
Exactly.
But it's not the hospital, it's Misty. And she's telling Ty about the retreat and how she needs to come there. And this is when I texted you, because again, I was watching this Friday morning, and Misty says it's a bunch of granola losers, but the food is surprisingly great. And I was
granola losers
currently eating granola.
Yeah, you granola loser.
I was eating my granola and yogurt in the morning, being called out by Misty.
Such a funny insult. Granola losers.
Yeah.
She's having a great time.
She is having a great time. She's in her element. A mystery is afoot.
Exactly. And then what? I think we're back to Ty and Van, who are
in the car
on their way to Misty.
I love that even Van's car is old.
Yeah.
Like it's a 90s, it's like not a station wagon. It's like an old Range Rover or something. I can't quite remember.
Like that. They have an interesting little conversation here. I really like the two of them calling each other out on things. Like they really, because like, not that Ty has any room to talk, but it's also like Van's not like in the great space that she would like Ty to think she's in either.
No. And it's interesting because I think when we saw the preview and we saw Van first seeing Lottie, we talked about how, well, we'll get to it, but we talked about how stunned and emotionally like affected she was. But here we see on the way there, she's just like kind of dismissive of the whole thing. She's brings up the fact that like, no, I'm not curious to see what Lottie, the diagnosed schizophrenic, is up to with her cult. Like, I'd rather keep the past in the past and all that stuff. And so it's interesting to think about at the end when they see each other, how that goes right out the window.
Well, and then Ty says like, she says like, keep the past in the past. She's like, you live in the past. You own a video store. And then Van has that
half your wardrobe is Slater Kinney t-shirts.
And she has that line where she says, like, but not the past where we thought things could be. I don't remember what she says exactly, but it's important because she says, like, not the one. It's like, the past where we thought things could still be good, not the one we actually lived. That's not exactly what she says, but
that's the idea.
Saying. And it's, again, so interesting to look at the different ways these women are stuck in the past. Like, Van also can't move on, but her stasis is rooted in this sort of, like, idyllic disappearing into the movies and into this, like, to like, and really the part of, like, that time period that they missed out on by, first of all, being stuck for a year and a half in the woods, but then also having to, when they return, they don't get to kind of jump right back into things the way everybody else does.
Right. And Ty is, I think, asking these questions. She asks, like, she wants to know she hasn't given up on love. And Van is like, well, yeah, I have, but not because you.
Don't flatter yourself.
Yeah, don't flatter yourself.
So good. But I love the idea that Van has had some kind of little life out there that we don't know anything about.
And honestly, like, Ty is married with a kid, but the amount of time we've seen Ty and Simone together, they haven't felt connected in, like, the way that two married people you assume are connected. Like, I think because we assume that Simone doesn't know about Ty's past, in, like, the worst parts of it, that there's always this divide between them. So, like, even though Ty theoretically has been in love with her wife this whole time, she even said to Shauna when they were having that little sleepover, like, it's a different kind of thing with Simone. It's not exciting. It's not, like, it doesn't have that thing. It doesn't have it.
Right.
Well,
and it's sad to think too, for poor Simone's sake, that, like, everything Ty has done, it has seemed up to this point, is in her quest to live the life she had planned for herself before she left. So it's quite possible that in the same way that going, away to law school and becoming a lawyer and all of that, like, part of that plan was also to get married and have a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
And she,
Yeah. I mean, I think she and Shauna have that in common, right? Like, they both went and lived some expected life. Like, Shauna's wasn't the one that she had anticipated for herself.
It's somebody else's expected life,
but still they both ended up kind of trapped in what they thought, or other people thought, was, like, the path that they were supposed to be on. We get back to the cult for a minute and back to Nat and Lisa. Lisa comes in with the fish. Is it 14th Gilly?
I think it's the 14th Gilly.
I think I thought it was 13th, but I think it's 14th.
It'd be a little on the nose for Lucky 13 to be the one.
Yeah. That's true. But Lisa's trying to have Nat be responsible for something other than herself. She says, even if just for today.
I love the idea of them passing this, like, Sisterhood of the Traveling Gilly back and forth whenever one of them needs it most.
Yeah, and Nat's like, I don't want your fish. But this, again, was, like, such a nice Nat scene where, like, Lisa is getting to her, right? She says, like, why did you forgive me for, like, trying to stab you with the fork? And she said, something about meeting suffering with compassion. And, like,
it's another canned kind of line that Lisa has heard probably Lottie say.
Yeah.
But when, like, thinking back to earlier in the episode when I was saying that Nat is still kind of like this teenager, of course a line like that is going to work on her now. She's being, and I mean that in a good way, that, like, Nat is, that, like, somehow Lisa is kind of, like, giving Nat the support and the care that probably if Nat had gotten when they got off the plane in 96, she might be in a much better place now.
And I think part of the reason it seems that they didn't get sort of quote unquote good therapy when they got back is because nobody would admit what happened. And so you can't process trauma if you can't talk about it, or if you can't at least admit it to yourself even, And so now she kind of is doing that because she doesn't seem like, she hasn't told Lisa flat outright, like, oh yeah, we ate people. But, like, she keeps saying, like, we did really bad shit out there. And Lisa's like, yeah, people do bad shit. Like, so what? I
love Lisa.
I know. I know. I just looked at my notes as to what came next.
Oh, what would we do without Jeff?
I don't know, but I would be so much sadder. I cackled.
He's so silly.
He's such a 90s himbo.
Oh my God.
I mean, not that NWA is himbo music, but there is a whole generation of like white dudes that were like, you know, singing along to NWA, you know, in the 90s.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just love that he is thinking like Jeff is like, I think in a lot of ways thinks of his life like it's like a soundtrack, like these songs, like the Papa Roach and you know, when he's really going through it, and then this when he's out front of the police station. Yeah, like it's so endearing. I bet he's got playlists for like every part of his day. He just
oh my God,
I love Jeff.
That's a task for Slow Sunday. Come up with each of their like Spotify playlists.
Yeah, right.
Like, what's Jeff's running playlist? Yeah. So Jeff's listening to Fuck the Police outside the police station.
He's there and he's supporting his wife and his daughter.
He is. If he can't go in with them, he's going to make sure his music gets his feelings across.
Exactly.
But then Ty calls Shauna's phone and he answers it. And he tells her she's in the bathroom for some reason. I don't know.
It reminded me a little bit of like, you ever answer the phone when you're high and realize you shouldn't have?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, of course.
Like,
not for a long time, but yes.
Yeah, I haven't either. But I remember one time very specifically where a friend of mine who I'd been high with in the past called, but for some reason in my head I was like, oh no, she's gonna know that I'm high, right. And then just trying really hard to be like normal in that moment. And I know that he's not here. But...
Yeah, I mean, why did he answer her phone? Like that's such a weird, you know.
And it's not very Jeff. Well, I was going to say it's not very Jeff like because here's what my thought process just was. Well, he knows his wife is like has lost her mind. He also knows that I think he knows that Ty is in on it, right? He knows that.
I think so. Yeah. That
they helped her.
Yeah, that's true.
With the body. And so the like speculative part of him I could see answering, but then I was like, but it seems like Jeff would want her to think that he trusts her, and I don't mean that in like a sneaky way, but in like I want my wife to know that I trust her way. Yeah. But I also think maybe he just didn't think about it. The phone rang and he answered it. Because he even says like, I got a call. Well, actually you got a call. Yeah. A little later.
This is such a weird stilted conversation. Like, and I think I chalk it up to them all being like kind of out of their minds with confusion and stress and
and who knows what about whom.
And this whole weird situation they're in, but neither of them are acting like normal human beings. Like
no, not at all.
Jeff is like, you know, oh, she's in the bathroom. It might be a while. And Ty like stiffly recounts the entire situation where she's like, and I'm with Van. Jeff's like, hi, Van.
It's so funny because they're like, on the one hand, it's as if she's she's telling it as if she's lying. Yeah. Like as if she's making up a story on the fly. But it's also as if she's telling it as if like, why am I telling the truth? Oh, I'm still telling I am continuing to tell Jeff the truth. What is going on here?
Right. And Van's looking at her like, okay, yeah. All right, sure. It's such a weird moment.
It's so funny though. I really loved that because it was so odd and I don't know what I wonder, that's one of those things where I'd really love to know if that was a Tawny line read decision or if the director was like giving that.
Act like you're confused why you're speaking.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
but that's just a quick moment. And then we go back to the cult and Misty's holding court at the lunch table.
I also wrote Misty's holding court.
She is. That's exactly what she's doing. She's enjoying this fascination with her as one of the Yellowjackets. But then Nat comes over and asks Misty why she came back and says that Nat didn't seem like herself and she was worried. And I mean, she didn't.
No.
You know? She says that they're like celebrities there. Isn't it great? Nat's like, is it? I don't know. But this was what we've been saying about how Nat is sort of is actually changing from, I think, the relationship primarily with Lisa, because Nat asks about Walter And Misty gives some sort of excuse like, oh, that's over, whatever. And Nat says, we're all like this, aren't we?
And this is another example of what you were talking about earlier with her more subtle, but really like informative acting here. That line there's just so much in there.
So much behind that. And that I wrote, is she meeting suffering with compassion? Because she kind of is, right? Like This to me feels like the first time that she has looked at Misty and seen Misty suffering instead of seeing just Misty being a pain in the ass. Like,
yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
She's seeing Misty and relating to how fucked up the way that she sees the world is. You know, it really felt like a change to me in the way that she interacted with her.
And it's important, too, for Nat, I think, who has clearly felt so, and for good reason, isolated and alone and on her own. And those are 3 different ways to say the same thing. I don't know why I did that. But all of this time, and then to be like, oh, no, the other people I know who are here went through the same thing I did.
Yeah.
Like, and we've all been affected. And probably to Nat on the outside, for everybody except maybe Misty, what she has seen is, again, Ty living her sort of like political dream life, and Shauna married with her kid. And so I'm sure when you see all of that, especially if you're so concerned with your own survival and all of that, you might not think about how everybody else is, of course, suffering as well.
Right. Yeah. And up until this point, Misty has been sort of like an annoying gnat flying around. Gnat. Sorry. Oh, my brain is so slow right now. She's been this annoying little bug flying around Nat's head, and now it really seems like she sees her.
Yeah. Well, we're usually joking, but we have even treated Misty as sort of like we always say, like, you know, Misty seems to be the least affected, and Misty, you know, seemed like ready to just kind of like live, and she's given us reason for that. She destroyed the fucking transmitter.
Yeah, she also killed Jessica Roberts, most likely. Right. You know, so I mean, she is,
even if Jessica's not dead, that was certainly Misty's intention.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't think that we're wrong for reading her that way, but I do think I understand why it might have also taken Nat some time to really come around and see, with Misty of all people, that there's more there.
There's like some humanity there. There's some common ground in the how broken they both were by that experience. This is a fun little like nod to procedural shows to me, this moment where they go back and forth between the 2 interrogations where they're like pitting them against each other.
Trying anyway.
Yeah, it didn't work. But
2 great scenes.
It was a great scene for Shauna too. Like,
she's so good here.
Yeah. It's so funny because when I first watched this scene, I was with Matt in that I thought she was just like playing.
Right.
And being like, you know, putting on this act of, you know, oh yeah, I'm just this, you know, what did she say? I never even wanted to be a mom. I didn't start out as a bad person. You have a kid that you don't want to save marriage you got into out of guilt and shame, and you can't really let yourself love either of them, but of course you do. And I really was like, she's fucking with him.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, in the middle of it, I was like, no, she is being honest.
I think she's being strategically honest, is my guess.
Yeah, but I think her strategy is, once again, not great. I don't think it's
good. But I think actually, I don't know if I think this. Let me walk that back.
Yeah.
I wonder if.
It feels a little like she lost control in that moment.
That's what I was just going to, especially when the scene we see next with her and Jeff, when she tells him, like, you can tell she seems surprised that it happened.
Yeah.
But my guess is, I don't know. Yeah, I actually don't. I'm changing my mind in this as I'm talking through it.
I think we just assume because she has been so sort of cunning or I guess strategic, even if it's not always the best strategy. She has always felt like she's had a plan or something, even if it's not a good plan. Mm-hmm. Having this happen while she's in there kind of seems surprising at first, but she is falling apart.
Yeah, yeah. But it's also an honesty of it's not like, so if they pull those text records, they're going to see that Shauna did have an affair.
I know.
And if she lies directly about that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Now all they know is
she slept with him.
She slept with him, which the text will prove.
And then
it's
he
not
disappeared.
Right. Right. So whether it was intentional or not, I don't think this was a bad move. But it is interesting when you say like how cunning and kind of calculated she often is, whether or not it's, it's the thing to do. That this moment of honesty is juxtaposed with her daughter.
Yeah.
Being the cunning one.
Yeah. Yeah. Very calmly too. Mm-hmm. Like you see it happen. You see her face change when she realizes like, okay, I think I'm going to do this, because he says that Shauna's using her. And for a second, I think you're meant to kind of wonder like, wait, is she going to turn on her? And then you see like, no, she's going to take the suggestion, and say that her face crumbling is so funny.
It's so good.
Fake. Like you can see her put it on, but she goes full for, she goes all the way. Yeah. Like she goes right for it.
And Kevin, for a second, thinks he's got her.
Yeah.
When he pushes, because she's like, oh, it's so stupid. And he pushes the tissues toward her, and he's like, oh, no, you're not. He says, you're not stupid at all.
Yeah.
And then...
She's like, I was a virgin. He's kind of like, he's not that stupid, though. He kind of knows that she's probably exaggerating. But he did take her out to...
That's
drinks and,
And she's got proof of that.
Yeah.
She's got plenty of proof of those text messages. And she's so smart.
She can describe his weird-ass balls.
Apparently.
Yeah. Great.
It's just, like, he fucked up just enough that she, I think he's screwed. Because Kevin can, even like she said, okay, then charge me and we'll see who a jury believes.
Yeah. Which, was kind of laying her cards on the table, but also smart because it's true. Yeah. Like, she's like a sympathetic young girl. He's a creepy ass, cop with a terrible mustache. Like, I would believe her too.
Of course.
So they go back to the car.
I know that he didn't. That he didn't have sex with her, and I still want him to go to jail for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, he's awful.
Yeah.
He's awful. So they come back out to the car. Well, Shauna comes back out first. And Jeff is just sitting there, like, slurping on his drink in this, like, very weird, silly way. Something, I wonder if that was a choice by the actor to just, he's like, this is completely unimportant, but it just really, like, stuck out to me because it's gross. He's got a straw. He's got, like, a soda from a, fast food place. And he's, like, sucking the soda up into the straw and then letting it go back down, and then sucking it up into the straw and letting it go back down.
It's because he's also a teenager still.
He's putting
like such a teenage boy
backwash back in the soda. It's disgusting.
He might as well be blowing bubbles into it, like
gross. So Shauna comes back and she immediately tells Jeff what happened, and he's like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" He says, "You're out of control, Shauna." And she's like, yeah,
you think?
She's coming apart, And so he tells her about Ty's call and tells her, like, I think you need to get the fuck out of here for a few days at least, because you're, every time you try to, do anything, you're making it worse here.
Yeah, and he's right, because it's like...
Yeah, she's got the gun in the glove box of the car, too.
Well, because the thing is that, like, is the smartest thing to do when you know that the police are interested in you is to skip town? No. But if we're triaging the situation, that might be better than you being around, because, like Jeff said, she just keeps putting her foot in it in, like, a really... Yeah. Like...
She's running her mouth, like, just not to go backwards, but there was a moment that just made me hate the cop even more. Mm-hmm. When she says to him, "You're accusing me of being a bad mom," and he says, "Yeah," and she says, "Well, aren't you a fucking genius?" He looks like, "Yeah, I am."
Yeah.
He's so pleased with himself.
Thank you for noticing.
You fucking suck. I hate you. Anyway, I hate him so much.
He's.
But then Callie pops in to the car and says, like, she used Shauna's idea. Her line read of "Fuck, are we going to jail?" is good there. That's a good one.
Are we going to jail?
Yeah. She says it very casually.
Mm-hmm. I really do care for Callie, and I like this turn in a way, but it's also so sad to see her kind of thrive in this now that she's in on it with her mom. It's a sad.
I mean, after Shauna says all that to the cop about how she never wanted Callie and like she loves her in spite of herself and all that, imagine growing up with that parent.
Yeah, because even if Shauna has never said that to Callie, and I'm sure that she hasn't, there's no way you can feel
it.
That for sure.
Oh, yeah. Callie is actually, as funny as she is and as fun to watch as the actor is, like, it's not a happy story in that way when you think about what her growing up was probably like. Speaking of mother-daughter-like relationships, we go back to Nat and Lisa. Although Lisa's gone, Nat is just staring at the fish.
She really thought she was going to be able to kill this fish.
I knew there was no way she was killing that fish.
No, of course not.
She just watches it breathe for a second and then just like dumps it back in. But this is what I meant about the clothing, because she puts the fish back. She's currently wearing red, black, and yellow. She feeds the fish and then she puts on the lavender clothes. Like in that order.
She's like, kind of leaning in. Like she knows that.
Like those ugly lavender Birkenstocks that she had like thrown off the bed previously. That's what she goes to grab.
It's so funny. It's interesting that like Lottie's stupid wellness retreat is actually like seems to be doing some good for
Nat anyway. Yeah, she's like actually facing what happened a little bit more. And then we get the last couple of scenes of 2021, which in the order of the show leads up to like right before the end. But we see Van and Ty in the car. Ty is going to like get out. Van's in that moment saying like, I don't want to go up there. And she's like, we can go to IHOP instead. Like, we don't have to do this. But this was like, again, I know we don't have that many Jersey moments right now other than Misty's brass knuckles or whatever, but we see Shauna just kind of fly by and go up the driveway, and I was like, oh yeah, that's how she would drive that minivan.
Oh yeah. There's just something so fun about all of them as adults, because even just that little bit of Ty and Van being like, that Ty's like, shit, that's Shauna's minivan. And then they're both like, kind of like energized.
Yeah.
By that.
Follow that van.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought that was it was such a fun little, I don't know. Especially when thinking about really how serious all of this is.
Oh, yeah.
There was still such a light moment.
Yeah. And this begins sort of the convergence. Also, Shauna got there really fast. She drives like she's from Jersey.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because that has to be, if they're in upstate New York, that could be anywhere from like 2 hours to like 5 hours or even more, depending on where they are.
Yeah.
But she got there quick.
Yeah, especially, I guess I was thinking about them having to time this so perfectly.
Yeah.
In terms of like when Ty and Van leave Ohio versus.
If a train leaves Ohio at 6:07 and New Jersey. Although, I mean, if they're in Central Jersey, nobody cares about this. But if they're in Central Jersey.
You and I care.
And Van and Ty are in Ohio. If the cult is in like Western upstate New York.
Yeah, that's true.
Then they would actually get there much faster than Shauna. But if it's in like the Hudson Valley area,
which is, I think, for some reason,
not
did
important
you and
things,
I decide that?
I decided that it was near the Hudson Valley, that it was sort of like either Catskills, Adirondacks. I think just because there is a lot of sort of like pseudo cult wellness sort of stuff going on up there.
Yeah, makes sense.
But this is where the convergence begins, right? They all start to come together. Shauna and Ty and Van get out of their cars. Nat comes down in her heliotrope. Lottie is standing in front of the lake. And she turns around. And we get that eye contact that we saw in the preview.
I know we talked about it last week, but Van's reaction is truly
so
baffling.
intense.
Like, I can't wait find out what's going on there.
I know, their first words to each other. Because she really walked into that situation like, this fucking place.
Yeah.
This stupid cult. And then she sees Lottie and her face just completely flips. Mm-hmm. But this is where, like, Lottie turns around and we see the overhead shot, which shows us, of course, that Lottie has set it up as the symbol.
What the hell, Lottie?
Yeah, her planters and her beehives and her stage all make the symbol. I mean, it's on the necklaces they all wear. It's not like it's that big of a surprise, but it was still a very striking visual.
You know what? Why are we all losing our minds over that? It's on the necklaces they all wear.
I know.
It's not a surprise at all. No. It might as well be on the gate. You're right. You're right. I don't care anymore.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, she's already using it for everything. Did I just blow your mind?
Drone out there to do that. Of course it is.
Yeah.
It should also, it's probably like on, like.
It's like on her letterhead.
Money. Exactly.
All the stationery that she got printed for her cult.
It's such a big deal.
Her graphic designer formatted it.
She got necklaces made.
Yeah, she got necklaces made.
Sorry.
I know.
I don't know. Why does it matter?
It doesn't. But it was something about the visual. I will say, even knowing that, there was something about the visual of them all converging from opposite ends of the symbol.
Yeah.
And like seeing that the paths in the place,
and that it's been
the lines
in plain sight this whole time. And that, like, sure. Okay.
Yeah. But yes, they already are wearing necklaces with the symbol.
In my head, I'm like, did Lottie do that on purpose? Is this just something that she's been compelled? Like, is the triangle just like, does she like, because the triangle is just like a path. It's not like the lines are like planters and the head and the hook are, but the actual triangle and the main line through. And I'm like, does Lottie have like a morning walk that she does that she doesn't even realize she's been paid? Like,
no, she just uses the symbol for everything.
It's even, we haven't talked about this.
It's on her business card.
Well, but there's literally a painting in her cabin or in her like house or whatever that's just the straight up symbol. Yeah. It's not even hidden.
It's like a floral motif, but it's the symbol. Yeah. No,
what are we doing here?
They're all wearing those necklaces.
Should we cancel this podcast?
Oh, God.
It was the last big shot in 2021.
Yeah.
Like the last scene in 2021 before the last scene in this episode is the big reveal.
It's, of course it's there.
I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm so taken. I'm crying a little bit. I'm about to cry a lot.
Yeah.
Because we're moving into 96.
Yeah, we're going into it.
So I should stop giggling.
But so I think, in the sort of like what's next in 2021, we're going to see what happens when they all get together. And I have no predictions. I have no idea. There's all sorts of wild things out there about like, they're going to all go back to the cabin together, or they're going to sacrifice someone.
Hey, listeners, just a little editor's note here. We recorded this episode before they released the trailer for next week. So Jodie and I do some speculating, but we don't have a whole lot to go on. And so I just wanted to pop in real quick and let you know that's what's going on here in the rest of this episode. That's all.
I did see there were some photos. There's no new trailer, but there were some photos released. Mm-hmm. And there was one of someone at the cult holding a goat. And I really hope that goat is okay.
Oh, no.
No, hopefully it's just like a goat for milk and it's not going to be anything else. But I saw someone holding a goat.
God, though, the juxtaposition of Nat not being able to kill a goldfish and then all of them sacrificing a goat would be...
Yeah. Well, wasn't Walter at one point making goat cheese or goat milk?
Goat cheese with Billy.
Yeah.
Billy the goat, yeah.
I would love to see Walter come back and be like, hey guys, thought I was gone, did you?
I hope that we get a little more Walter.
I think we will. I was walking the other day in my neighborhood and I saw a guy wearing the Walter
puffy vest.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great.
Pretty good.
I'm procrastinating. I don't want to talk about the sadness.
It
starts on a light note.
Well, let's start here first. Is that just to remind people, if you didn't listen to last week, because we mostly talked about Rosemary's Baby, you and I speculated quite a bit about the different possibilities of what this birth could be, including a stillbirth, including birth and then death, including we joked that maybe she gives birth to a demon like the Jersey Devil. You had your really cool hysterical pregnancy theory.
Which I was right that I was wrong about. I knew I was wrong, but I liked it anyway.
Yeah, but it's still a cool theory.
Yeah.
I think, is that...
Well, the other option would have been that the baby lived and was still alive somewhere, which I don't think either of us thought was true.
No. And then, and the last thing we said was that we thought probably the baby wouldn't survive, but we'd never actually see that happen because they would dress it up with some sort of hallucination.
Right. Which we were also wrong about, but...
Yeah. We were wrong about that and kind of, in a weird way, right about a lot of the rest of it, but also wrong.
Yeah. Somehow managed to be both at the same time.
Yeah. So...
But we start off ahead of time. We start off earlier than the crash in health class. This was so funny. I saw someone on Reddit posting, like, would a coach really be teaching sex ed? I was like, yes.
It's okay.
Literally
Jodie.
Everyone's gym teacher taught sex ed.
Okay, so I was thinking about this too, because I saw that on, like I said, I don't mess around with Reddit because people are like really deep in theories and smart there, but I do sometimes pop into the Facebook groups before we record because there's never a productive discussion over there. And somebody said the same thing there, and then I was like, is that just a Jersey thing?
I don't think so. I think there were other people on the thread that were like, no, my gym teacher was also my health teacher.
It's funny because my first thought was like, well, no, because in Mean Girls, there's a big joke about the coach in Mean Girls also being the health teacher.
Right.
But then I was like, Mean Girls, the movie's set in Chicago, but it's based on a book about a school in Jersey. And I was like, oh, so maybe it is just Jersey. But it's not just Jersey. I was reading up on unrelated to Yellowjackets Reddit thread where somebody just randomly was like, everybody else have their gym teachers teach their health classes, and it seems pretty split. It seems like some schools, it'll be like the biology teacher, or some schools
that would make more sense.
Well, it would make even more sense than that.
A health teacher
it's to just hire a health teacher, of course. But some people were saying that their school nurse taught it.
Oh, interesting.
Like, the one person with some medical training.
Actually, one year we did have that. Usually it was a gym teacher, but when I was in like 5th or 6th grade, that very first, oh my God, did that bring back a weird memory.
The one where they separate you out and make you watch, The
nurse came in and she had big boobs. And she came in and she grabbed her boobs and she said, "These are not boobs. These are breasts." And I was like, what? Oh boy. Wow.
You could have gotten that message across
by not touching yourself. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That was a repressed something or other. But anyway. Yes. Coach Ben is showing the Miracle of Life, a movie that is horrifying when you're in junior high or high school. And we just see a little social scene of like Van and Ty sitting behind Jeff and Randy, joking about how Randy needs magnums all day. And Jeff passes a note to Shauna. And we see here actually that like they've been doing this now for a minute and that he's pursuing her just as much as she's pursuing him.
Yep.
But then she does this little thing where she has to like cover it up because it's like, well, why is Jeff passing her note in class?
Right, because Jeff's an idiot.
Yeah, he is an idiot.
Although, here's something, though, is Randy is being a jackass and being really gross and inappropriate, and Jeff is refusing to engage.
Yeah.
He won't even look at the screen, which is its own kind of immaturity.
Yeah.
But it's like Jeff's kind of always been Jeff. It's inappropriate, and obviously it's really fucked up that he's sleeping with his girlfriend's best friend.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know why it feels like, oh, but that's just Jeff. He just doesn't know any better.
I think that's what it is. I mean, we talked about this when we talked about season 1. I don't know if we ever ended up with it as part of the pod, but like the fact that Jeff is yet another sort of male figure in this that we think is going to be a lot worse than he actually is, right? Because of the position that he's put in the show and what his role is. But actually, I mean, yes, he slept with his girlfriend's best friend.
But it
People
seems like
do
the worst
fucked up shit in high school like that. Like,
yeah. And it's like the worst thing Jeff has done. If we don't count blackmailing his wife,
the B-mail.
The B-mail. The worst thing that Jeff seems to have done is to sleep with his girlfriend's best friend when he was a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, Jeff.
And I mean, I don't know. I feel like when you're in high school, you do dumb shit like that.
Right. Right.
And maybe other people didn't, but...
Well, and it's also like Jackie and Jeff both, like, they both knew that they weren't.
Yeah,
you know,
Jeff even says it later to Shauna after the lunch with Jackie's parents, where he's like, she was going to dump me anyway. Like, this was not a lifelong thing. Like, I was the high school boyfriend.
Knew that.
Yeah, but she says Jackie likes poppies.
I'll bet she knows that. I'll bet that's correct.
Oh, yeah. She knows
bet it wasn't
about Jackie.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else specific in this scene. I feel like there was one other thing that was like very...
Well, Misty asks how much blood there is on average.
Oh, yeah. And Misty's the only one who's watching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's when Blur starts playing and we get the flip. Yeah. With the woohoo.
So good.
Oh, my God. The music cues.
This episode had, I mean, they always do, but this episode had a few really great choices.
Yeah. But now we are in it, and I feel like we stay in it.
Yeah. That needle drop in particular really made me excited for this in a way where I thought maybe we were going to be gearing up for something not completely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because it's such a high energy. Yeah, no.
It got sad. But I think the big thing here, so we can talk through it kind of beat by beat, but I think the big thing here is the sort of fake out of it all.
So I was thinking as we talk through this, let's just make it a point to mark where that occurs so that Yeah. And I saw something where the creators or the director of that episode, I think it was, said like if you go back and watch, they definitely did some sort of like little Easter eggs in the background to like let you know that this is different, that this is like not the same. Oh, really?
Yeah, it was little things, I think, but I definitely noticed that, well, we'll talk about it when we get to it, but I definitely noticed that when Shauna is in her sort of like near-death kind of dream state, that the interiors of the cabin look different.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've watched it only twice so far, which is low number for me, but I definitely want to go back and like look a little more carefully. But so we go to the cabin and Shauna's in labor and everybody's running around trying to get everything set up for her as best they can.
Seems like they should have had a better plan by now. They've had so much time.
Yeah. No plan. Nope.
So
Although somebody made a bassinet out of sticks in a really creepy way.
That was a creepy little bassinet. Yeah. That was probably from the baby shower, though, right?
Probably, yeah.
It just seems to me like Misty at the very least, and an upside down cross. Yeah. Which, well, Mari kind of, because she makes that
mobile.
weird little mobile. Yeah.
Yeah.
We should have known.
Yeah.
We kind of did.
Yeah.
But they have no idea. I'm just because like we see very quickly Misty is not prepared for this.
No.
And I'm just surprised that she didn't have some plan leading up to it. That they hadn't like stockpiled
rags. Well, she and Crystal were going to sing. They had a plan. They were going to sing.
They were going to do a song.
They were going to do a song.
They were going to do a song.
Yeah.
But
Mari asks if they need to boil water and they're kind of just not sure what to do.
They're all just kind of scrambling around. And then Shauna is clearly in a lot of pain, which childbirth is painful, but you can tell immediately that like this is worse than I think anybody was expecting.
Well, especially when we see this pretty shortly when Misty ends up like trying to help and be the sort of like, sort of midwife role. Yeah. And she ends up with her hands all bloody and we're like, uh-oh. But before that, we get Lottie and her crew sort of imposing their ideas on the situation. They grab hands with Travis and who else is it? It's Van, Travis, Jen, and Lottie holding hands. And Lottie says, we should say our hopes for the baby.
Mari, wilderness, I hope Shauna doesn't die.
Oh my God, Mari.
I know everybody hates her. I don't know. She cracks me up. But the real thing here in this scene is that they pull that shit. Lottie is like all up in Shauna's business, and Ty is the one who makes her back up and says like, you need to give her some space. I know you're just trying to help, but this is hard enough, it was only just a few hours before that they were out in the woods and Shauna was like, I need you to have my back. And in this moment we see Ty, because it's not necessarily that she doesn't believe that Lottie's group could maybe have some influence there. Like,
we see her take part in a weird way, kind of split between the two ideas a little bit later on.
Right. But in that moment chooses to.
Yeah. She's like, this is not helping. You need to back off. And so they don't. They just don't do the weird, creepy shit near Shauna.
Right.
They go do it over by the fire. But Shauna's like, says something feels weird. Ty gets her a drink. I hadn't really thought about this until everybody started bringing up Rosemary's Baby again, but there's a lot of people giving Shauna drinks in this, which kind of, to me, called back to the sort of smoothies from the neighbors.
Yeah, and only one of them is drugged, and that one isn't even real, because as we know, that was part of her hallucination. But it's still really... What we do know to be the case, and has been the case even before this episode, is that these people feel a lot of ownership over Shauna's baby, and then by extension, Shauna's body. And so the fact that they are, and I know that in this case they're doing it to be helpful. They're bringing her tea and whatever, and it's there, but it's still like it. That parallel definitely still exists, I think. I think you're totally right to call that out.
Yeah, she's like a vessel for something that they are counting on to be like a super important part of their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Lottie even says to Misty a little later, you can do this. You can save our baby.
Our baby.
That's not part of the hallucination.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So Misty ends up kind of freaking out after she sees the blood. She's not ready for this as much as she thought she was. And she kind of runs away. And Akilah's like, I guess it's me.
Which is interesting. I mean, seems to be so directly related to Crystal's death, because we see she's like having these sort of like kind of like PTSD flashbacks sort of, because Misty's not squeamish. She hacked off Ben's leg just a few months before. She was the one who ran to our friend Allie when she got that compound fracture. Like this isn't really just about the blood.
No, not at all. It's definitely related to just losing Crystal like the day before or whatever, or the same. I don't even know. It's hard to tell how much time has passed because they came back. It's got to be the same day. They came back. Shauna was in labor, and it was at the same time when they were out in the snow that Misty and Crystal were out in the snow. So it kind of all just happened. This is also where we see Ben kind of refuse to help, which I thought was super, probably going to be important in some way.
They are making a lot of Ben for someone who hasn't had to do very much. And I keep thinking that every week where they make sure to give us at least one Ben scene, like they're gearing us up for something. He is... It's hard because
I don't want him to die.
I don't want Ben to die. He's so useless here. He doesn't even like. They're giving.
No, but all the gay people need to live.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, on this show,
no more killing gay people in TV shows. Please.
I know, and
I'm over it.
It's funny because I'm obviously with you, and I'm with you here too. But this is a show where, at the very least, our queer characters get to just be characters for the most part. Like, and so if some of them, I don't want Ben to die. I understand. I know I said he's useless here. I understand, but I get it. I do get it. He's right.
Yeah. I mean, all he did in the classroom was put that tape in.
Yeah.
It's not like he understands the female reproductive system either.
Exactly. But he is the adult, only adult in the room. So
and that looks like so terrified when she realizes he's not going to help. And just so horrified by it.
And so they tag Akilah in, which is a really good. And Akilah's got this, and Akilah's like, dude.
Well, she's got Nugget on her side.
Right, Nugget.
She's got Nugget in her pocket.
Ben and Nugget, I am very worried about both of them.
I know. And the only thing we see of Javi this whole episode is he's just kind of standing there watching all this happen. Like, we don't know that if he's spoken yet. He probably hasn't. He's just kind of observing the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, and we see him right after Ben says he can't do this, which is interesting because Ben is the only one that he's spoken to at all at this point. So it's interesting that he clearly clocks that moment. Yeah.
So Lottie, being turned away from, standing over Shauna, takes her little cult, her budding cult, over to the fire. Travis takes down the skull. Mm-hmm. Not Lottie.
It's so I know I say we talk about a lot, but we've talked a lot about this sort of like them just kind of creating these rituals and this meaning out of nowhere, and it's like Travis just decided that because I guess that head came from, or assuming this from the wilderness here, that it's like a stand-in for it, I guess.
Right.
But that's nothing. There's nothing. There's no precedent for that. That's just something he did in that moment.
Also, why do you have to use your palm for the source of the blood? That is a stupid idea.
Truly.
You need your hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so dumb.
It's also the easiest place to get infected, too.
Yeah. So he bleeds on the thing.
Mm-hmm. Though it is Lottie who says spill blood. So he brings the head down. Lottie instructs him to do it. He does it without question.
He's got the knife out. He's ready
to go. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then other people in the group
with their
offerings. It's like a piece of hair, a button.
It's like that thing of like somebody in like a cartoon trying to pay for something, and it's like, what do we have? And they like empty out their pockets, and it's like lint and a button and a little spool of thread.
Mm-hmm. But we do see, a piece of hair, a button, and then what looks like a seed pod. And because I'm psycho, I definitely went through lots and lots of horticultural pages looking for pictures. And the only thing that it looks like is an Nigella seed pod, which is, I wrote this down because...
Of course you did.
Yeah. And it really looks like that. And it has a few other names. Its sort of colloquial names are Love and a Mist.
Oh, yeah, this is absolutely what it was.
It's totally it, right?
I'm looking at a picture now, yeah.
Yeah. It's also known as Love and a Mist, Ragged Lady, and Devil in the Bush.
Stop it. Yeah. Jersey Devil in the Bush?
Jersey Devil in the Bush. It has been used as a spice. It also said, I read conflicting things. I read it's been used as a spice and also that it's toxic to people. So I don't know.
Both could be true.
But it's not native to... This is another one of those things where I'm going super, super deep, and the creators of the show are like, we just found this creepy pod, and it's just what we had. But it's not native to northern Canada.
Oh.
And so it had to have been brought there if there's Nigella plants. But again, probably overthinking this.
Where do they grow?
They grow all over the place because people have brought them there, but they're native to like Asia, other continents, not this one.
Interesting.
Yeah. But lots of people garden with them here because they make these like pretty flowers.
So it could just be that the cabin man had a pocket full of them.
Yeah.
At some point.
He showed up with some seeds for some decoration.
But either way, it is a funny little offering.
And then Lottie bandages Travis's hand and says, "The wilderness recognizes your sacrifice, and so do I." Which just feels ominous for some reason.
Yep. We get a little Ben fantasy next.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Surprisingly, the first time we've heard Madonna.
Yeah. Uh-huh. It's a Rescue Me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this is a weird... Like, most of his fantasy flashback things have been very clearly in the past. Mm-hmm. Even if they're imagined in the past. And this, he's kind of flipping back and forth.
Yeah, I got the impression that he was going away to something that hadn't actually happened for sure, right?
He's kind of combining the cabin and his previous life. Like, they're in a cabin in this,
it's just like an active, intentional kind of dissociation.
Yeah. And it's definitely got, like, signs of his current situation. Like, there's antlers behind him in the scene where he's standing up playing charades. I love that the reference in the charades, or the answer, was One Life to Live. A fun nod to, like, soap opera culture in the 90s.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Not a thing anymore, really. Not the same way.
No, not so much.
Yeah, but shit's going bad now.
Yeah, this is the moment where I started to think this like next moment is where I was like, oh, this baby's not going to make it and we're going to see it. Like this is just going to be a brutal episode that we're going to have to deal with.
But we see the placenta come out. And Ty says that's supposed to come after, which I wouldn't have known, but I knew it was not good.
I actually looked that up while I was watching, because I wasn't sure. I knew it was supposed to come after, but I wasn't sure if when the placenta detaches and comes first, if that automatically means the baby's going to die, and it doesn't. But it's definitely a critical issue no matter what.
Yeah, and what I read was that it often means that the mother is in danger also of dying. But this is, I gotta shout out Akilah with the consent. She tells Shauna that she's good. Okay, I'm gonna touch you now. Like, good job. But Lottie then goes to get Misty because things are getting real bad, and she's like, "You have to help." This is where she says, "You can save our baby." Yeah, but this calms Misty down. Lottie gets her back on track.
You can see that Misty shoves that away somewhere.
Yep.
Which we see Misty do all the time in the present, I think.
Yeah. And this is also where we find out that she and Crystal had a song planned.
We were going to do a song.
I already miss
Lottie.
Crystal.
I know.
I already miss her energy. But she charges back in. I noted that she was wearing a lavender cat sweatshirt. Just kind of a fun little moment. But Misty tells her to push, and she says, "You're so close to being on the other side of this."
Yeah.
Then you get to meet your baby.
Shauna says, "Please don't let my baby die."
Yeah.
And then everybody's...
They're all fucking chanting.
I hate the chanting. I hate it.
I hate it.
We hear the wilderness and it hears us.
Yep.
And that's
Travis
when Shauna
is crying.
Yeah. It's a harrowing scene. And then Shauna passes out.
But interestingly, there's one thing I wanted to note. Ty takes the bone that Laura Lee gave Van.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, and puts it in Shauna's hand. This is what I mean about her kind of playing it both ways, not sure what makes the most sense, because she's shooed Lottie away from them, but she is chanting with everyone, and she puts the bone in her hand, so she's kind of hedging her bets.
I think we've talked about this. I think that's the kind of person I would be out there. I'd be doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah, same.
So same. I totally get it.
Yeah. But I do think it's interesting that she puts the bone in her hand. And then, like you said, the baby starts to come out and Shauna passes out. And is woken up.
Right. And now...
yes.
Okay, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say she's woken up by Jackie's voice. Calling her name.
So that... I wasn't sure if that's what we were hearing or not, but it does sound like...
It is.
Okay, it's definitely
Somebody found exactly where it came from.
Oh, it's a pull from another episode?
It's a pull from this scene in the meat shed.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's the same, Shauna. Shauna. From that.
That's really smart of the person who found it and also the showrunners. But as we're watching, we hear a voice kind of call Shauna to wake. And what we now, having watched the episode, is this is where the dream sort of hallucination, whatever you want to call it, sequence
near-death
starts.
Experience,
exactly.
Whatever. Yeah. Other side.
Yeah, you'll be on the other side of this. Is where this starts, though the show, is obviously trying to hide that from us for the most part.
Yeah, in the moment we know something's off.
Yeah.
But it's not clear exactly what's happening.
It's funny, there was so much off that I knew was off, but it was happening. One of the cool things, it's another thing that would happen with Lost a lot too, is that you could see all this stuff happening. You could see that it's all off, but they're switching back and forth so often between the current state and the previous, and there's just so much happening that I never had time to sit and think about it long enough to be actualize the thought fully that, oh, this is a hallucination for me anyway. It wasn't until quite a bit later.
But there were definitely clues.
Absolutely.
People are a little too giggly for the fact that she lost a lot of blood and this was very traumatic. It resembles the sort of the scene when Jackie died, when everybody was standing around welcoming her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, the thing that I wrote down when I was watching it was that the camera work is different. It's like kind of shaky. It's just it's a different kind of style of shooting.
Yep.
But
there's a beautiful and heartbreaking Elliott Smith song playing.
Yeah. And Misty hands the baby to Shauna and says, "It's a boy." And the baby is crying. We take a break here to flip back to the present timeline. And then when we come back, the baby is crying again, but it feels a little more unsettling or stressful this time.
Yeah. It just seems that this baby has probably not stopped crying this whole time. And we find out that he won't latch, that she's having a hard time getting him to breastfeed, which in the wilderness is obviously crucial. I know there's a lot of like stigma around, women who choose not to or can't or whatever or won't. In our, I was going to say in our world, which I guess this also is, but you know what I mean. But even more so, it's like even more critical, obviously, out here in the wilderness.
Yeah, there's no formula out there.
Yeah, exactly.
The baby cannot eat bear meat. Or starling soup.
Yeah, exactly. And we get a few scenes that are just Shauna trying to get this baby to feed.
And this is where I when I was referring to how the cabin looked different, it looked different in these scenes. And like, I think it's close enough that you can think like, oh, maybe they moved her into Ben's room and it looks a little different or something, but it just doesn't look like...
That's what I assumed.
Yeah,
I was
but
like,
it looks off. It looks off. And she's visited a couple of times by her teammates. Nat comes in for a minute.
And she's weird in the scene.
Yeah.
In a subtle way, but she's just strange. She's just
this is where I texted you is Shauna breastfeeding a dead baby.
Right.
Like, is what's happening the Jackie thing all over again, where she thinks the baby is talking to her awake and alive, and it's actually not.
And nobody knows how to deal with that, so they're just kind of giving her space.
Because that was the kind of the look on Nat's face, and also on Ty's face when she comes in the room later too. In the middle of this, we see Lottie. We see Shauna wake up, and Lottie is holding the baby.
Lottie is breastfeeding
the baby. Yeah.
Which is, again, this was the scene where I was like, Lottie is a lot of things. Lottie's a lot. But I was like, this is a bridge too far, like even for Lottie.
Well, and this is a little bit of the Rosemary's Baby of it all, right?
Yes.
Because in that movie, which we just watched, they take her breast milk and feed it to Satan Baby.
Yep.
And also we see that in this hallucination, Shauna, I think, feels like she's being poisoned or something. Like she stumbles when she stands up. There's like a very specific shot of the cup of tea that Ty had given her. And so it has a little bit of that. Yeah,
we're definitely being meant to think something nefarious is going on here. Aside from even just the breastfeeding, which is bad enough.
Yeah.
She says, we need to feed.
I know. Jesus. I also noticed one of the things we mentioned about in Rosemary's Baby was the fact that Mia Farrow's character towards the end is wearing like a very light blue robe. It's very like Mary-esque. And here Shauna has this like light blue sweatshirt wrapped around her head that's very like Mary-esque also. But finally, Shauna addresses the baby. And to me, this leading up to the baby finally latching was just like the saddest, sweetest, most horrible thing.
Yeah.
But she says, I love you so much, and I can't wait to see who you'll become, where you'll go, and what you'll do. It's you and me, kid. It's you and me against the whole world.
I don't know how to explain this exactly. It's such a cheesy young mom trying stuff on line that it is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's just Shauna trying to step into this role that she didn't really want in the first place. But now that she has it, she so desperately does. It's like, it is so heartbreaking when you... it's
such an innocent thing to say,
Yeah, exactly.
But But this is when Nat comes back.
Yeah.
In this hallucination or whatever, and brought her tea. And she says, what a miracle. I'm going to go tell the others. But her tone of voice is like weird and off.
Yeah. This was also very Rosemary's Baby, where she's like, I'm going to go tell the others. It reminded me of when Guy is like, you know what I want to do? I want to go tell the Castavets.
Yeah.
Because that baby also didn't belong to Rosemary in the same way that Shauna's baby doesn't belong. I mean, it does to both of them, but like the people around them don't view the baby as belonging to the mother.
Yeah, totally. And then, oh God.
And then she wakes up. I was lucky enough to realize the moment before we see what's going on that for sure she is in a dreamscape. She's in a terrible hell of her own mind's creation. Thank God, because this scene is
rough,
awful.
Yeah, and she looks drugged or poisoned in some way in this moment. She kind of stumbles out. She sees the sacrifices, asks where the baby is, and then sees them all crouched in front of the fire.
Yeah, and it's interesting that even in her hallucination or whatever you want to call it, it's all of them. Even Ben.
Yep.
Even Ty. Like.
Yeah. Every single one. And she screams and runs over, grabs the blanket, and just starts yelling, like, what did you do? But we don't actually see the baby, so to speak.
And they showing the placenta in the graphic way that they did made me think for a second. I was like, they're going to make us also see this baby. They're gearing us up by showing us this, like, kind of like graphic sort of birth. So that we're prepared when they actually show us the baby, which thank God they didn't.
No, I'm glad we didn't see that. The only baby we saw was about 6 months old.
Yeah, seriously.
It's always so funny. I mean, they can't use newborns, but it was a big, healthy baby.
It's funny that they can't use newborns because all babies are babies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The idea that, like, I don't know exactly what it is, but that there's some sort of... I want to say labor law or something that says like a 6-month-old baby can work on set, but a newborn is very funny.
I'm sure there's a reason that neither of us know because neither of us are parents, but
that actually does make sense. But it is just really silly to think that like that 6-month-old can sign a contract, but a newborn can't.
Yeah. That was when, going back to when we actually see her holding the baby in the beginning when Misty hands it to her, and it's this like giant, fat, healthy looking baby, and I was like, okay, either something is going on here that is like this isn't real, or this was an oversight and they just got like a big old fat baby and it should have been at least a smaller baby.
Yeah.
But then we find out what really happened.
Everybody in the scene, Shauna especially, of course.
Yeah.
Everyone is so good and so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I
know, you can see the devastation on all of their faces.
And I know this is an obvious thing to say, but it's just so heartbreaking to imagine all of these young women around together with just the most traumatic thing that any of them have probably witnessed up to this point. Like,
yeah.
And one of their friends who, like, things are obviously strained here in the wilderness, but they all care about Shauna, of course, and this baby. Like, it is.
Well, and it's like, it is the death of the baby, but it is also, and I'm sure we'll see this next, going forward, but it's like the death of hope in a way. That's what we talked about it as a while back.
Absolutely.
And Ty says that she lost a lot of blood and lost consciousness, and we thought we lost you. And Misty hands Ty the bundle, and Ty says that he didn't make it. Yeah.
And then Shauna is she's like, but no, I held him and he wasn't eating, and then I fed him and then he was crying and he's still crying. Why can't you hear him crying? And even as she's saying it, this isn't, there are kinds of traumas and heartbreaks and whatever that lead to somebody really believing that, but that's not what's happening in this moment. Shauna is just like, I don't think anyway, it's just like desperately clinging to the possibility that maybe, even though she knows it's not the case. It's so sad.
Yeah, it felt more like grief than outright denial.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to, it felt like denial, but it felt like
it's the grief kind of denial. Yeah, it's in the dab to the line of regular old grief.
Yeah.
I'm only making that distinction because this is also the same girl who spent a couple of months talking to a dead girl in a meat shed. So I just
totally, but I thought it was interesting, like, as she's crying and saying that, everybody starts to get up and walk away. Like, everybody turns away from her except Ty.
It is, that is so upsetting to watch. And again, none of these people are equipped to deal with this. These are teenage girls out in the wilderness, and Ben. Like, so it's hard to watch that, but it's also like...
But it really speaks to the bond between her and Ty.
Yeah, also
that we see still existing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It is Shauna, for some reason, and I think it's because Shauna in the present day is such a like different kind of character, that sometimes I have to, and it's not a fault of anybody on the show, because I think both actors do an incredible job playing versions of each other. It's not that. But sometimes I have to be like, oh, right. Shauna in 2021 is the same person who was pregnant, delivered a baby, and now watch that, didn't even watch the baby die. Shauna,
woke up and it just was gone.
To her. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I thought this episode actually did super well, was tied those two Shaunas together.
Absolutely.
Like, we talked about these in chunks because of just practicality, but the way that it jumps back and forth between the two in the show itself really does tie together the experience she had with how she is now with Callie in a way that, like, makes it super clear, like, the effects that this has had.
Yeah, like, when Misty says, you'll be on the other side of this and you'll get to meet your baby, the next scene is Callie and Shauna walking into the police station together.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the issues with the way that we end up recapping these is we do sometimes miss talking about those jumps, but it's just impractical to try to do it that way.
We can't talk about everything that we want to all the time.
Some of those jumps are super intentional, and I mean, a lot of them are intentional, but like in this episode, I felt like they did that just to show us Shauna then, Shauna now, and how one led to the other.
Exactly.
In like a really clever way.
It's just, my heart broke, and we've talked about it, of course, but to see this thing that we've been waiting for, and then to think about Shauna being back stateside, whatever, and getting pregnant with Callie. How much longer did it take then? If Callie's what, 17?
Yeah, there's a timeline somewhere, but
like still like 8-ish years. It was like a pretty significant chunk of time, and how long it took her to, and then as we know in this episode for sure, she didn't want anyway, and like how terrifying that pregnancy must have been for her, and to not be able to talk about why it was so terrifying for her is...
Well, and I saw an interview with Melanie Linsky after this episode aired where she said that in her mind, you know, and she only knows as far ahead as the scripts of this season, but in her mind, you know, she thinks that maybe Shauna came back and couldn't explain to Jeff, like after they got married, why she didn't want to have a kid. And so just kind of felt like after a while, she just kind of had to. Otherwise, she would have had to explain to him what happened. And we don't know if he actually has read the journals by then or not. So we don't know if he knew, but...
I don't think...
No. I mean, if he knew that she'd had a stillborn baby out there... I think there would have hopefully been more conversations before her having another child.
Yeah, absolutely.
About what that would be like.
Even as Jeff's a lot of things and he's a dummy, but I think is, he's got a big enough heart to understand that.
Exactly.
Much at least. It's, I know we've said over and over again, like Jeff's baby, she's pregnant with Jeff's baby in the wilderness, but it's so crazy to really think about it now, especially now that it's happened and all that was our friend Jeff's baby out there too.
Yeah, totally. I don't know. I saw in an interview with I think it was with the director, they said like the death of the baby, I'm quoting from the article, the death of the baby is also the death of something that everyone had pinned their hopes on and that was distracting them from losing their minds, and the idea that they're not being rescued, that is grim, and it's bound to be a catalyst for even darker choices that are going to be made in the wilderness. So this is sort of, I think, a turning point. Like eating Jackie was a turning point. This is another turning point where things are going to continue to get even darker. I mean, there's a reason they haven't shown us any previews from next week. I think that they said that it's going to be very different, that things take a turn and the last few episodes are very different than the first 6.
We only have, 3 left?
I think there's 3, but I had seen somewhere that it was 10. I saw somewhere it was 9 and somewhere it was 10. I'm hoping it's 10, but it's either 9 or 10.
Okay. But either way, we've got
3 to 4 more.
I mean, think about the difference between episodes 1, 2, and 3 and 4, 5, and 6. Like, there's plenty that can happen now.
And I think we still have a Cabin Daddy episode coming, as much as I hate to call him that.
I'm a person who, I know that everybody will be outraged, but if we get an episode that is just Cabin Daddy and we never see our survivors, I will be fine with that. I kind of like those, not throwaway episodes, but like, I kind of like...
Like a bottle episode.
Yeah. And like Lost did it to me. It's Lost's fault, but I'm totally fine with an episode like that. I know that the fandom, and I won't blame anybody, will be furious. But I like lore. So...
Yeah. I mean, we know we're getting something about it, whether it's like a whole episode or whether it's interspersed back and forth with things kind of going awry in the cabin in 96.
I hope they find a box of his old... Did I already make this joke? I hope they find a box of his old belongings and it is just a bottle episode of them looking through his stuff and then us getting flashbacks to cabin. It's like, here's his old, like, he also played soccer. Here's his old soccer trophy.
Oh, God.
And then it's a scene from him in high school. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see because we have no clue where we go from here.
Yeah, usually every week we've got like a couple little things where, because I was just thinking like, trying to like prime a question for myself of like, what do we think is going to happen with blah, blah, blah. We kind of don't have anything for 96 left, right?
Well, we've seen, what have we seen? Because there's still some little clips from preview videos that we haven't actually seen yet. Somebody did a compilation of them somewhere. I can't remember where, but like, I know that there's a scene of the women in 2021 all sort of like dancing around a fire. We haven't seen that yet, but I don't know. I don't know what we haven't seen in 96 yet. Yeah. Cause normally at this point we would start to kind of throw some predictions around. We don't have a lot to go on. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we still got to figure out what's up with Javi. Doesn't mean we're even going to this season.
Right.
I know Ben's got, like I said, they're making it a point.
Yeah, I did see in one of the photos from next week's episode, because they haven't released a preview, but they did release some photos, and Ben is shaving his beard. And there's been some speculation about whether that is like for the baby's funeral, whether it's him preparing for death, whether it's him turning a corner.
Yeah, because that could be a good sign or a bad sign.
Right, exactly. So we don't really know what it's about, but he's shaved his beard.
Getting eaten. I haven't up until like, or it's not that I hadn't. I've been holding out hope that they've been hinting toward or making it seem like we're going to lose Ben, and it's just like a. Not even a red herring isn't even the right word, but that like I've been holding out hope that actually we will see him at some point in 2021.
I know.
Just because I kind of need that and want that.
Yeah.
More and more, I just think
probably not.
Yeah.
I know. I really don't want him to disappear.
Who are you most worried about at this point? I have 2.
Okay. Who am I most worried about? I am worried about Ben, and I am worried about Akilah.
They're my 2 as well.
Partly because of the mouse.
Yeah.
Somebody suggested, I keep saying somebody, it's always Reddit. Somebody suggested that the mouse is actually already dead.
And she's just been carrying it. No. She's talking
to it. I mean, have to go back and look. See if that mouse is moving. But yeah, I'm worried about Akilah and I'm worried about Ben. And I don't know what even answers to look for because we know we have season 3 eventually.
That is something we should talk about.
Yeah. We are a pro-labor family over here at The Watchers, and we support the WGA. We also hope that the companies get their shit together so that we can have a writer's room again.
Exactly.
Because
yes, for the
season
writers'
3, they had one day
in
the season 3 writer's room before the strike.
And I get very nervous as somebody, again, I'm a survivor of what happened to Lost, the last big writer strike that we had.
Yeah.
And I talk about that a lot whenever I talk about Lost. And of course, this is something that needs to happen. And like you said, we support the folks who are striking for really reasonable,
very reasonable demands. Yeah.
And I hope that it, for their sake, is over as quickly as can be.
Yeah. Totally.
And then also a part of me is just selfish and wants
the show to come back.
Wants my show to come back and to come back.
So we definitely stand with the writers and also hope that our show comes back in a timely fashion.
Exactly.
I was going to say, because we only have 3 or 4 more episodes of this show left, if any of our listeners have suggestions for other shows or movies they think we should cover, because we are planning on, kind of pivoting in the interim to something related, to, send us an email, post on our Instagram, put it in a review, do whatever,
Yeah, let us know.
Because we are taking suggestions at this moment.
I don't know. Jodie, is there anything else?
It's just like, I just feel like there's this blank road ahead of us. Like, we know some things that may be coming. We know we may see them discover Adam's body based on that shot of the crime scene. We know that at some point the women in 2021 are going to be dancing around a fire together. Like, there's some things we've seen, but we don't have any real knowledge about what next episode is going to be.
And we've only been recording for 2 hours. Usually we've got another hour in us of speculation.
Yes, but the pollen is attacking my face.
So this is perfect.
Yes. I think that, most of the speculation is speculation that we've already kind of done before in terms of long-term directions they're going with things. Yeah. I do think that it's whatever we see of Shauna in the woods for the rest of the season, it's not going to be pretty. That she's going to be very, distraught, isolated, maybe dissociating.
Yeah, I'm worried for her. I'm worried for everybody. I will say, just as a little note, if you didn't listen last week because you weren't interested in Rosemary's Baby, I maybe said this a little bit at the top, but it seems like the writers were definitely drawing on it for this episode in some ways. And we do also talk about the show for a good chunk of the episode.
The last 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah. So if you didn't listen last week and you need a little more of us because this episode might end up being a little shorter than usual, maybe, go check out last week's episode.
I will say shorter for us is still longer than the actual episode.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say it probably won't actually end up being any shorter. But either way, if you skipped last week, might be worth going back and listening to it now.
Yeah.
Because I think there's definitely some valuable stuff. So, yeah, I think that's it.
I think so. I think this was a rough one, and with some amazing acting, and it answered a big question. Mm-hmm. Like we said earlier on, this show is not holding back on answering big questions. They're answering them and then moving on, you know? And I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that.
Big time.
I'm full of pollen.
All right, everybody. Well, you got to go get some of that local honey. That's
local honey. Yes, yep. I got to go find my local cult that is...
It's also a great Brian Fallon album, Local Honey. Check it out. Jersey artist.
Nice.
That's everything.
That's all right. Everything.
Gonna go let Jodie try to recover from the wilderness. Rate, subscribe, review, etc. at WatchersPodNJ on Twitter and Instagram. Mm-hmm. Let your friends know about our podcast.
My Instagram outside of this pod is Jodie_Mim. And that's JODIE_MIM.
I'm at AQ Andrea Q on Twitter and Instagram. The AQ does not stand for Antler Queen.
But it should.
It doesn't yet, anyway.
All right, everybody.
Thanks so much for listening. We will see you next week.
See you next week.